So the following program will be recorded.
Radio.
You're listening to The Jim Colbert Show.
Welcome back to The Jim Colbert Show, Real Radio 104.1, 407-916-1041. Text us 77031. I am Jim. Deb is here.
Hello.
Jack is here.
Yo.
So is Ross.
That's right.
Good and loud for our buddy Ray Traendly.
Hey!
TK Law, onefirmforlife.com. Offices right there in Altamont Springs. Again, that's onefirmforlife.com. You know, and here's kind of a really good example of how diverse the firm is, to be honest with you. I mean, you can handle divorces, estate situations, and a situation like we had with this groomer up in Oviedo.
Yeah, and you know, I think one of the benefits, and wasn't planned this way, but you know, when Steve first had his vision, we had a foundation of litigation. And when you have a foundation of litigation, it really opens up so many things to you, because what you do is you see all the things that could go wrong in a contract or in a negotiation, because you have to get creative. You have to make these arguments that sometimes they're a stretch, and then it gets you better prepared on the back end and trying to avoid situations like this.
Right.
But unfortunately, you didn't choose this situation. It just kind of happened.
It did. It happened to us. And let me compound that. You know, knowing Steve, by the way, Steve Kramer founded the firm. TK, the K part of that is Kramer. Traendly, of course, the T part. Steve ran the firm and formed it years and years ago. And I've been a good friend with Steve Kramer for many years. One of the most interesting, cool people you'll ever meet, even outside.
Creative guy.
Can I tell you, we rarely talked about the law. We talked about cultural things most of the time. Real deep thinker, real interesting fella, and genuinely, I really do revere his friendship as I do yours. Yeah. And he offered me a lot of great advice through the years as well. And I leaned on him quite a bit because, you know, he had that knowledge I did not have, and really made things clear and easy for me to understand. And again, you have as well. So I think that may be one of the biggest assets an attorney could have, is to be able to speak the language of, you know, the non-attorney language and relate what's happening in real terms to your client. I think you guys do a really fine job at that.
Well, and Steve and I also had and I want to get back onto this, but Steve and I had a really weird parallel where we both saw our parents go through some nasty divorces, and it really inspired us to be involved in the law because of what we saw our parents go through. And we have a weird tracking of facts, and like, if you were to write a book and write them side by side, you'd be like, are you writing the same story
right,
twice?
It's like the same thing, huh?
But you know, like 10 years later, so it's odd.
That's very cool. It's cool that you guys hooked up and started the firm and really have provided a lot of great services for many Orlandoans like myself. Now, let's get into this situation. January of this year, in preparation for Valentine's Day, we took our little Sharky, Sadie. She's about 9 pounds, up to the groomers. We dropped her off at 10:15 and then picked her back up at 1:18 and noticed something awry. Now, I'm going by the timeline that you gave me. Make sure that you interject to make sure I don't say anything. The groomer, by the way, is best groomers ever in Oviedo.
And we have a timestamp of that 1:18 because your wife took a picture of Sadie in the parking lot, not, you know, any nefarious reason, just taking a picture of the dog and say, hey,
so cute.
Look how cute she is. It's Valentine's Day.
Yeah. So it's got BGE Grooming in Oviedo. We dropped her off at 10:15, picked her back up at 1:18. Tori sends me a picture of Sadie at 1:25, and then another at 3:10. Tori calls the vet at 3:20. By the way, I have the vet's information here as well, the medical report from the vet.
Well, in the second picture, right? So the first picture, I think you had a meeting here. That's not necessarily part of the timeline that we, you know, worked off of, but you had a meeting. I believe you saw the picture that Tori had sent you, and you said something doesn't look right.
Yeah,
and you asked her to send you another picture.
Her eye was blood red.
That's right.
I mean, blood red, as if somebody had painted it with blood.
Right.
Like mine at like 9:15 tonight.
Now, when we took her to the vet's the vet that she's been going to since she was a puppy, and the vet said that she had subconjunctival hemorrhage.
That's correct.
All right. Discuss with the owners the diagnosis of this. Discuss that the most common cause of this condition is a traumatic event, force trauma directly to the ocular region versus increased pressure around the neck. Although some can be due to non-traumatic glaucoma, which she does not have. Cough and hemorrhage. She did have the cough, persistent for a few days after that, and was squirming and kind of squirmy when she came into the into the vet.
And that was also one of the things that the vet had mentioned, was that was consistent with some type of trauma to the neck from a collar or a lead. So
Right.
kind of that pulling motion on the neck.
So Sadie at the vet for an exam, diagnosed with subconjunctival hemorrhage, commonly caused by, like we just said. We called, my wife then, at about 4:19 that afternoon, called BGE to find out what happened, right? When we called to ask, and this is not on your letter, I want to make sure I have this right.
Yeah.
When we called to ask what went on, the girl, if I remember correctly, said, let me check the notes and make sure that there was nothing happened. She checked the notes and said, got back on the air and got on the phone and said, well, we didn't see anything in the notes that there was an accident or anything happened. Then my wife said, well, on your video, on your website, it says that all of these procedures are videotaped. Can we get the videotape? She said, well, give me a second. And I think either said, give me a second or let me call you back.
I think it was a return phone call from memory. But
Exactly.
yeah.
Okay, I want to make sure I get that right. And when she called back, that's when she said,
Talk to a lawyer.
yeah, you're going to have an attorney to get that. And we were flabbergasted. We were literally flabbergasted because they put that on the website, to kind of give you some comfort that, hey, you can trust that, we're going to take care of your dog. We're videotaping everything,
Well, and not only that, they advertise that care, right? You can leave your loved pets with us. We're going to make sure that they're well taken care of. You're going to be a part of the process every step of the way. And it continued to escalate from that phone call.
Those cameras are that's a big assurance to pet owners. Is
Absolutely.
That I can either look in and see what's happening, or if there is a problem, I'm going to be able to go back and see
One
what's
of
happening.
the attorneys in my office has a golden doodle, and they have their dog in one of those daycares.
Yeah.
And they have those 360 cameras everywhere, so you can watch them, and you can watch them play with other dogs. You can watch them being fed, and all that stuff.
And the thing that really shocked us the most, and by the way, this wasn't even close to the first time we'd used this groomer, not even close. And that's what really shocked us. Like, they knew who we were. They know that we're a good customer. And when they said, you got to get an attorney, we're like, what?
And then it was your attorney needs to speak with our attorney.
Exactly. And then
that's where it escalated to.
And then when I believe when we said, okay, well, we'll call an attorney. Well, then when you called them, the answer was something like, what was the answer at that point?
The answer was, you got to get a subpoena.
You got to get a subpoena. In other words, you have to file a lawsuit.
That's right.
Now, of course.
Let me just move that goalpost.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly it.
And that's exactly what kept happening. And then, of course, this is where you kind of come into play and start contacting and having a conversation with their attorneys and their insurance attorneys as well, correct?
Yeah. And so we reach out on the 23rd. So Friday is the day that the appointment is. Monday, we reach out and we say, hey, listen, we just want to figure out what happened. All we're looking for is the video. Make sure you save it and preserve it. So in fancy legal terms, we call that a spoliation letter, which is make sure none of our evidence spoils. And we want to set up a conversation because, on our end, there's a lot of different ways that this could be misinterpreted. Let's just have a conversation to figure out how we can resolve it amicably.
Right. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to find out what happened to our dog. That's all we wanted to find out. And then when they started setting up this wall and talking about attorneys and that, we didn't even know how to react to that. It's like, wow. I mean, could you imagine doing business with somebody for quite a while and then all of a sudden it just kind of turns?
So for about 5 days, we're reaching out to BGE Grooming saying, we understand you have an attorney. Please give us their information. And on the 31st, so, again, for context, it was the 23rd of January as we send our letter.
Right, 3 days after the event, we sent the letter of spoliation, basically saying preserve all the evidence.
And make sure you save it.
Right.
On the 31st, we receive a response from an insurance adjuster, essentially, who is reviewing the claim and saying, we will preserve the information, we'll preserve the video, and we want to set up a call to talk to you, which is great. It's responsive to what we wanted. And so we responded, we set up a call. And that was on the 31st. After about 2 or 3 days of going back and forth in phone calls, and mind you, consistently requesting an explanation about what happened to Sadie.
Almost every single time that you would talk, the first thing I would ask you is, what are they saying? Are they saying anything about the information? Are they giving us any information?
No information about what happened. No delivery of the video, even though, again, that's something that they advertise, is that all these are recorded. And we got kind of excuse after excuse about
stall.
Absolutely stall. So, it was, and I can't remember all the things that were brought up, but it was, we want to protect our employees' privacy, and so we don't want to disclose videos of their face. And so, it's okay, we could blur those out. But also, I gave them some legal references to assuage their concerns about employee privacy. They brought up a concern about whether or not they even had to disclose the video.
Oh,
and
you're the ones who advertise it.
And
You're the one who told me to get an attorney to get it. You're the one who did that. These are the people who told me to get an attorney to go get it. That's exactly what I did.
Well, and they cited to some terms and conditions that apparently, they slap on the back of a piece of paper and say, hey, sign this. And so they came up with excuse after excuse after excuse to not deliver. And I said, listen, at some point we need to escalate this to either a supervisor or an actual attorney. And that's what happened on February 28th.
Yeah, 228, exactly.
And that's when we first hear from the attorney. At this point, it's been escalated beyond the adjuster. The attorney gets involved.
And you can see this has already been going on a month now. A month for the situation that could have been handled in an hour.
Even less than that.
Yeah.
And the very first thing we say to the attorney is, hey, listen, we're not looking at making a mountain out of a molehill. Here are the facts. Here's what happened. This is the story we got. This is the next story we got. This is the next story we got. I give them a beautiful summary. And the key was, this doesn't have to get nasty. And I don't want to get into any of the confidential settlements that are made back or forth, but we were willing to be extra gracious in God bless Jim and Tori, because they were being extra gracious.
It's May. It's the end of May.
That's right. And giving them additional time, trying to sort it out.
So when are they sending the video?
No, that didn't happen.
On May 7th, we get a response saying the video is no longer available.
Oh,
Saying
isn't that convenient?
And even better, like the same day, I believe, if you check the time, I believe the same day they say that they got the spoliation letters the day that it was recorded over.
That is. And we've asked for proof of that, and we have not received that proof.
Right.
We got a weird email today, which I don't really have an explanation for other than it shows a screenshot of May 22nd, which is yesterday.
Thanks. If we wanted to know what the place looked like on May 22nd,
That's
that
right.
would have been awesome.
That's right. So
we're looking for January, though.
So it's been
5 months of feet dragging.
a lot of that.
It has.
Go ahead.
No. I'm listening to you.
I was going
I'm
to say,
so frustrated. I'm starting cursing you again.
from my years of experience, generally speaking, when you see somebody who doesn't want to share evidence, it probably means it's not very good and it's not in their favor.
And by the
Exactly.
way, here's the beautiful thing of this entire thing,
Which
right?
tells me it's also not an accident.
Now, let me ask you real quick. I mean, you don't have to give it all. If you were to file a lawsuit against a company like this, there is a minimum fee for that, right?
Yeah, so you have to pay filing fees and things like that.
Yeah, filing fees, pay your attorney's fees,
Sure.
do all that work, and theoretically, you could go through that entire process and nothing would come of it. Like literally, we could have, this is just you and I
Sure.
talking here, we could have gone through that entire process and they could have sent the same exact letter saying, oh, sorry, no video, buddy.
That's right.
Sorry you blew that 7, 8, 10 grand or whatever it was to try to make this happen. So that's what and the reason I'm saying it is this, right? This happened to us and we got lucky. Our dog is fine, right?
Right.
Our dog is okay. But it could have really been not okay. And maybe I would say most people wouldn't have the means to begin a conversation about a lawsuit like this to settle something like this that's so nominal. So, I can't say with fact that they would know that, but when you look at it, you could assume, wow, man, that would be a legal maneuver they could do to avoid providing evidence in a scenario like this.
And it's not uncommon, too, when you're dealing with insurance companies and you've got relatively nominal damages claims, that they expect that your attorney isn't going to take it on a contingency, right? So conceptually, if you get 30% of $1,000, a lawyer's not going to invest 50 hours of time for $300,
No.
right? They understand that concept. So then it becomes an hourly fee arrangement. And in an hourly fee arrangement, you always have to talk about the return on your investment. Right. So am I going to get, 10-to-1 return on my investment or 5-to-1 return on my investment? And in a case like this where, unfortunately, this is the PSA out there for everybody, the damages to your pets in a situation like this, it's either the value of a replacement pet.
Right.
So if you got a dog that, like my dog is a mutt, she's a beautiful, wonderful mutt, but There's no value to her.
Yeah, to your family,
She's not a French
everything.
bulldog.
Right. She's not a French bulldog. She's not purebred.
You couldn't give my wife $50,000 for that dog. She wouldn't take it tomorrow without question.
I'm certain my wife will cry more when my dog dies than when I die. I am certain.
So that's the thing that also makes it very interesting, because pets are so much a part of your family.
Absolutely.
And we actually took this like it was happening to one of our kids. Like, we could not believe it, man, how abruptly the mood changed with these people when this happened. Because let me tell you something. In my world, if that was a situation, like, I would immediately think, and of course we did, because we don't have any other path to automatically think the worst possible scenario happened. Because they're not. If it was an accident, like, we thought, well, maybe she fell off the table. Maybe the groomer turned around, and while she had the collar on her to keep her head up, maybe she fell, it choked her some. But wouldn't you just say that?
So let me take a story in my background. So before I went to law school, I worked as a veterinarian technician at a vet's office for 4 years. And there was a time where there was a cat that had a bad reputation, and cats in general are hard to
that's why they wear those gloves.
Wrangle. Yeah.
That's why they wear those gloves.
And there was a cat that, had a little coughing problem after a day at the vet. And I was the vet tech. And so my job was to call the client and say, hey, listen, this is what happened. And, we're going to continue to monitor, and, if there's any additional fees, like, we're going to cover all of that.
Right.
And, but we wanted to make you aware, don't want you to worry, but also don't rush back, because we're going to keep her and monitor for the 24 hours. And we did that because, it is a part of what people expect, is that, hey, things happen, but you got to make it right.
That's
and
right.
You got to
make it
talk
right.
to people like they're human beings, and that their feelings matter.
And we were like a new customer. And again, we had a set relationship with these people. They know the name of our dog. They knew our number. We had them. We brought her in all the time.
Tagged on Facebook.
Yeah, tagged on Facebook, the whole 9 yards. And by the way, we're talking about best groomers ever in Oviedo, BGE Grooming. If you're wondering, that's the groomer that I had the situation with. And let me say this, because I think this is very important to say. I am not telling anybody out there not to use BGE Grooming. I'm not doing that. All I am telling you, though, is this situation with us was alarming, and it did happen at that groomer.
Right.
These guys did tell us to get an attorney. We got one. Then they stalled us and said, well, you got to file a complaint. Then they told us, after receiving our letter of spoliation, that they'd already recorded over the video.
Apparently before they got it,
Yeah. 3 days later.
3 days later. I mean, not even a full 3 days, but that's...
Yeah.
Do you think there's anybody out there, though, would do the $50,000 for a dog deal?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, 100 times.
Yeah.
All
I mean, I'd
right.
probably do it. Anyway, I'm just joking.
And you know how I know that?
14.
You know how I know that? Because when we were doing our research for this, because, laws change all the time, and it's been a while since I've had to deal with a situation like this. There are cases where, unfortunately, people have lost pets.
Right.
And they file those lawsuits, and they go through the entire process because they want to inspire change in the law. And there's two ways you do that. The legislature votes, or you get a judge to either rule in your favor or rule against you. You go through the appeal process, and you go all the way up the chain. And if the Supreme Court in Florida says that you're right, then you've now built law, essentially. And so there are people that have done that. They've gone through that process, and it's exhausting. It is emotionally and mentally extremely trying. But that is how important our pets are to us. And I think that one of the things that, we all agree on here is that, they're an extension of our family.
Yeah.
And it's it's not right to not treat it that way.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons it was so shocking about the spoliation letter is, in our business over the years, we've received a number of these preservation letters.
Yeah.
That basically said, hey, don't delete anything you said, don't delete anything, don't do anything. We've gotten these all the time. Can I tell you, when I get those things, it's terrifying for me. Because you don't even want to accidentally do anything like that to put the company at jeopardy.
Right.
You just simply don't want to be that guy. And in this situation, it wasn't like that at all. It was confrontational immediately. Immediately, it was confrontational. That day, it was confrontational.
Right.
Hours after that, it was confrontational.
And
It was, you can hear it in my voice, guys. It was genuinely unbelievable. Like, I sat in the parking lot with my hands over my mouth like I'd just seen a wreck. I couldn't believe they were doing it.
Well, this is a statement of my opinion only, but when I spoke with you and Tori that first day, it still hadn't set in what was happening. It was still the emotional, just trying to figure out what had happened.
Right.
and just kind of being lost.
Because another thing too is we had gotten our vets, we got the vet, and the vet looked at her for sure, but we didn't know long term what was going to go on.
Right.
We didn't know if there was trauma because we didn't do an X-ray. We didn't know if there was a fracture or anything like that because she just did looked at the eye
and then the cough,
and
right?
then the cough, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, it was really it was a sad situation that was only escalated by kind of a disregard for your feelings and your desire just to get an answer.
Right. And again, just be aware. Just be aware. Again, not telling you not to do business with anybody, but you need to be aware. This situation happened at Best Groomers Ever in Oviedo, BGE Grooming, and just make sure that you're vigilant when it comes to taking care of your pets wherever you take them.
Right.
And make sure that people that you're doing business with are going to do what they say. And if they have video surveillance systems that lead you to believe that you can have that video to make sure that everything's fine with you and your pet, make sure that you're going to adhere to that. Ask questions before you leave your animal places.
Well, and I think, one additional element I'll add to this, and this is both before and after a situation like this, it's not uncommon for, somebody that owns a business to require you to sign some type of release or indemnity agreement either before or after a situation like this. So, one additional PSA out there is, just make sure that you understand what you're signing before you sign it, because, one of the common things that happens, especially in a case like this is, they think, okay, there's a nuisance value to it. We'll give them a check of $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever the number is. We'll have them sign this release, and now they control everything. You can't talk about it. You can't, we didn't post about it. Yeah. And you become in a situation where your rights are going to be severely limited, and
not interested.
Got to be aware of those options before you sign anything.
I'd rather have the truth every day of the week. 407-916-1041. Back in a sec with more of the Jim Colbert Show. We'll let them up. We'll do last call as much as we can. Get out of here.